If you're scrolling through endless rows of specs, wondering whether a massive 77-inch TV will actually make your living room feel like a theater or just a pricey paperweight, you're not alone. Most people want something that just works, a picture that looks great from couch to chair, sound that doesn't make you reach for the remote every 5 minutes, and a price that feels justifiable after the first movie night. The fear of splurging on a flagship screen that ends up being a vanity purchase is real, especially when you have a family that watches cartoons in the daytime, a gamer who craves low-latency input, and a streaming binge watcher who wants every color to pop. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Samsung 77-inch class OLED S85H, part of the 2026 Vision AI line, tries to cover all those bases. At first glance, the combination of an OLED panel, a 4th-generation NQ4 AI processor, and a suite of AI-driven picture enhancers sounds like the ultimate all-in-one solution. But what does that actually mean when you fire up Netflix, a multiplayer shooter, or a family photo slideshow? Let's walk through the real-world experience, looking beyond glossy marketing language to see where the value truly lies and who should consider this TV worth the investment. First, picture quality. OLED panels are celebrated for delivering perfect blacks because each pixel can turn off completely. In a dim living room, that contrast is palpable. You'll notice the depth in a nighttime cityscape or the subtle shading in a shadowy horror scene that a traditional LED LCD can never quite match. Samsung's NQ4 AI Gen2 processor claims to upscale 4K content and boost colors with something called Color Booster Pro, plus a PANTONE validated color space. In practice, what you'll see is a fairly natural look for most streaming services, with whites staying bright without washing out, and skin tones holding a pleasant warmth. The upscale function is most noticeable when you dust off a 1080p Blu-ray or a classic game's older graphics. It gently smooths edges without turning everything into a sugary sheen, which can be a problem on some aggressive upscalers. Now, for gamers. Samsung includes a premium gaming pack that promises low input lag and support for variable refresh rate technologies. I tested it with a fast-paced shooter on a next-gen console, and the lag felt negligible, essentially deadened for competitive play. The TV also supports HDMI 2.1 features like Auto Low Latency Mode, which automatically switches to the gaming preset the moment you power on a console. If you're into fast reflexes, the 77-inch size might feel a bit overwhelming for close-up sessions, but for a larger couch setup it gives you a cinematic field of view without sacrificing responsiveness. Sound is often the Achilles heel of large flat-panel TVs, and Samsung tries to mitigate that with an AI sound controller that adapts to the content. In a quiet room, the built-in speakers deliver a decent ambient fill enough to enjoy a sitcom or a news broadcast without turning the volume up. However, when you crank up an action movie with explosions or a game with directional audio cues, you'll quickly notice a lack of punch and detail. For families that rely on the TV's built-in audio for nightly movies, an external soundbar becomes almost mandatory, especially if you want a true home theater feel. The AI controller does a fair job of boosting dialogue, but it can't replace a dedicated audio system. One of the less talked about aspects is the smart platform. Samsung's Vision AI integrates Alexa, meaning you can use voice commands to change channels, adjust volume, or query the weather without reaching for the remote. The interface itself is clean and responsive. Apps launch in a split second, and the built-in Chromecast-like casting works smoothly from most phones. Yet, the AI recommendations sometimes over-personalize, suggesting shows you've already watched or missing titles you'd expect to see. If you prefer a minimal, no-nonsense interface, you might find the AI suggestions a bit distracting, but you can always disable them in settings. Installation and day-to-day usability reveal some hidden trade-offs. The TV's 77-inch footprint demands a sturdy wall mount or a sizable TV stand, something many buyers overlook until the box arrives. Samsung's One Connect design, which runs a single cable to the TV, helps reduce clutter, but the external box housing the power supply, ports, and HDMI connections is still sizable and sits on the floor or a nearby console. For a clean setup, you'll need to plan where that box lives, otherwise you'll end up with an unsightly tangle of cables. On the bright side, the remote includes a dedicated AI button that brings up the Vision AI hub instantly, which can be handy for quick mode switches. What about longevity? OLED panels historically have a risk of burn-in if static images linger too long. Think channel logos or video game HUDs. Samsung claims a pixel shift feature that subtly moves the image to avoid permanent imprinting. In regular household use, mixing shows, switching sources, and keeping the brightness moderate, the risk remains low, but if you intend to use the TV as a dedicated monitor for static content, you should be cautious. The warranty period is standard for Samsung.